Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Cheryl Carr, your work doctor, and this is the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. Welcome to the broadcast this Monday morning, where I'm at every Monday at 10 a.m. CST. And I always have to silence my phone. Sorry, I'm just so busy with stuff because I'm up usually at 4:30 in the morning. But I hope everyone's doing well and you had a restful weekend and you're ready to get into the work week and talk about these subjects that I'm bringing you information on. I want to start out by asking you to bringing you information of what was that? That I'm bringing you information about. And thank you for joining me on these broadcasts. I just try to be myself. I'm not trying to be somebody fancy schmancy and I'll doctor and psychobabble and all that. I just want to talk to you and share information that you can use. I'm sharing this information as my opinion, not just as a doctor and not just as an industrial organizational psychologist, positive applied psychologist, a neuroscientist, and also currently undergoing my certification for sex and family counseling. That should be fun. Anyway, I just wanted to talk to you guys today. We're going to continue our series about words, not just what's said, but what's meant by what's said. And guess what we're talking about today? We're talking about intentional communication. Everything in our life comes down to how we communicate. And a lot of us are on autopilot when it comes to communication, with not only just the words we use, but our tone, our inflection, our intention of why we're communicating. Words have meaning, whether you're intentional about it or not. They still have meaning, not just what's said, not just the words used, but what's meant by the words used. And that's really dependent upon the listener. And I think I've shared with you guys continually, the greatest need we have as human beings is for community and to be heard, not just listen to, not just have someone that you can, word salad with or just chop it up with, but you really need to communicate with others. It is a human need. And when we don't have that need, we fall into bouts of depression, loneliness, and sadly, some make the ultimate choice to take their own lives simply because they don't feel anybody wants to listen to them. So words are important. Communication is important. Good morning, sis. How are you? Welcome today is so important. I've had the pleasure of being able to work with organizations and individuals, as well as personally. I've worked to improve my communication skills, mostly because I communicate for a living. I have to not only be able to talk to people, use my words, but I also have to be able to listen to people and interpret what they're saying to me, not just by the words they use, but what they mean by what they're saying. And that takes listening skills. It also takes me being very intentional about the words I use. And I live by scripture. One of the scriptures that I live by is to make sure no unwholesome communication proceeds from out of my mouth, but only that which edifies and imparts grace to the listener. That's my intention with my words. But as I said, everything in our lives comes down to how we communicate. This is a very important life skill that unfortunately most of us never really pay attention to until we have a crisis or until we understand we are very passive communicators. And when you're passive, you don't think your voice deserves to be heard. So you subdue your voice, You don't say what you need to say. You don't speak up. You don't understand how to do that. And it is a learned skill. It is a learned skill. So you can learn how to communicate effectively. Also, people fall into passive aggressive communication. Passive aggressive communication is that type of communication where we don't really say what we mean, but we undercurrent communicate with people. And underneath the words we use is anger, unresolved anger, and feelings of not being able to express ourselves effectively because maybe we've never learned how to talk to people. Yes, there are a lot of people who just don't know how to talk to people. I go through battles with it because I'm a direct communicator. I don't coddle and hold people's hands. When I need to say something, I can be an aggressive communicator. I can also be passive aggressive, but I'm learning to be an assertive communicator, which is where we should all set our attentions to. And I'm going to teach you a little bit about that and how to do it. So, again, very important lessons. Everything in your life comes down to how you communicate. It does. Your whole station in life, your interpersonal relationships, your professional relationships, your work, quality of work, excellence in your work, everything will boil down to how you communicate. So let's get into today's topic, where I'm teaching you about intentional communication. Intentional communication has its own entire meaning. And remember, when I share information with you, I ask you to do something that is very hard for adult learners to do. And that is to assume you know nothing. Don't listen to me and go, oh, I already know that. I've heard that before. That's an adult behavior that prevents you from furthering your skill set and learning new information because you're a know-it-all. You think you already know what I'm saying, what I'm teaching, because you won't take the time to go, hey, I may not know this. So I'm going to listen with fresh ears. I'm going to look with fresh eyes. I'm going to take in this information and ponder it for a while and see how it fits into my life. So one of the things I like to teach people, and yes, I do have notes, is that in communication, one of the things that is very common is that we judge people by their actions, and we judge and want people to judge us by our intention. Did you catch that? It is very common to judge people by their actions and their words said, but we don't want that same judgment. We want them to judge us by the intentions. And nobody's a mind reader. So nobody can really clearly understand what you meant by what you said and by the words you used until you begin to communicate intentionally. Yes, sis. This is good stuff. This was the key to me improving my communication skill set. And this was key for me in helping to understand and listen to others better. So, understanding how we communicate is what I've been teaching about first. These last 2 weeks, today and next week, God willing, I'll be back here and I'll continue to teach you about why. Everything comes down to how you communicate. And we're also on autopilot a lot with words we use, the way we communicate, and our style of communication, which I taught you about the 4 styles of communication: passive, passive aggressive, aggressive, and assertive. And we can move in and out of that. Remember, I also taught we are not always the same way every day. It is really I am not a fan of personality tests, strength tests, things like that as a way to understand yourself better. We are fluid. People grow, change, adapt, experience things, go through trials and tribulations. And yes, it is really good information. And it's good to learn yourself. And it's good if you come to this information as if you know nothing and decide, oh, I want to learn better how to communicate and why I communicate and the way my style of communication that you may have fallen into habitually and decided to communicate that way habitually and on autopilot. And you can always learn new skills as long as you're not a know-it-all and you don't take things personally and you take this in and you go, hey, I want to learn how to communicate more effectively because I understand words have power and you can't take words back. So at the back end of communication, like after something's said, especially if it's something that led to arguments, anger, hurt feelings, or conflict, that can also lead to deadly encounters with people. Start sometimes with just words and arguing with someone and not understanding how someone is perceiving the words you're using and your style of communication and how you're coming across to them. It's so important to learn this, especially with the way you communicate with your children, because children are sponges and the words you throw at them are shaping how they talk to themselves and how they think about themselves. I hate labels, labeling someone a slow learner or as if they're going to stay that way their whole lives. They may be encountering something in that time period of their lives. That doesn't mean we can't teach them better, help them acquire new skills and workarounds so that they can become better at whatever it is we want them to improve on. Nobody is all one way all the time. We are all fluid and moving in and out. You're either in a storm, just came out of a storm, or about to come in a storm. And right now, as a society, we're all collectively traumatized. We're all collectively having to change our way of life. We're being forced into it by this. Well, I won't go into all that because I'll get off on a tangent and I don't want to communicate that. So I will reserve my words. But let's talk about how on the back end of communication, we sometimes don't understand what our intentions are. Now, some people are very deliberate, aggressive communicators, so they know. They already know they're getting ready to tear some stuff up with the words they use. That's their intention. But have you stopped any time in your communication with your communication style to understand what's your intention behind what you're saying? What are you hoping to achieve with this person you're communicating with? Have you ever stopped to think about that? And if you haven't, I want to challenge you to understand a driving force for all of how you communicate should be your intentions. You should never just let words fly out of your mouth. Because remember, you cannot take words back. Once you say those words, they're out there forever and ever and ever. They're in the atmosphere. And words are creative, they're energy. They can either bring energy to a situation, retain and suck energy from a situation, they wound, or they encourage. And it all boils back down to your intentions. So, what makes communication intentional? Intention means something done with intention or on purpose. It's communication that you're consciously aware of. It's not just blah, 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 blah. You're consciously aware. Like before I come do these broadcasts, I have to be consciously aware of the whole entire communication portion of the words I'm going to use, the direction I'm going to take the communication, what I want to impart to my listeners. I have to juggle my own personal thoughts, feelings, and actions before I come to this communication, before I come and try and teach something. And what I found is myself, and this is what a lot of people refuse to face, is that we're not very intentional with how we communicate. A lot of times we're off the cuff. We're lazy. We're habituated, which means we're on autopilot. We're unexamined, and we're assumptive, or we make assumptions more than we take in information, research, understand, and don't take things personally. So, with that said, that's just truth. There's very, very, very little good communication going on in the world. And I hope you're not a heavy duty news consumer. The reason why is because their intention with the information they're sharing is to inform you with the most negative or the most polarized and political information they can put out. It's not to help you. They even have a saying in news, if it bleeds, it leads. Who wants to watch all of that negativity all day, every day? So one of the best things you can do is limit your consumption of news. It's just, and I have friends and people I'm close to that they think they've got to watch the news every day. For them to hear what I say, I rarely watch the news. If I watch it maybe once a month, that's too much. I get my news through one in Washington. I watch the communication and the Washington reports and everything that comes out of Washington. I get either via Facebook or via my emails because I belong to a lot of journals and blogs that I can read my information because I look, I read, and I research. I question anything people are throwing at me because words matter, not just words said, but what's meant by what they say. And I find it very difficult to listen to news and most talk shows because the information isn't shared. Like what I'm sharing with you is so you can think about it for yourself. I'm teaching, I'm informing, but you got to do your own research. And most of the time I'm giving you homework and assignments and asking you to learn and have some self-awareness and do a little homework so you can deepen this information for yourself. So, first thing I taught, everything in life comes down to how we communicate. It even involves your spiritual life. How you communicate and pray has everything to do with the relationship and experience you have with your God. How you communicate and express yourself with your children, with your significant other, your spouse, all your loved ones will determine the quality of those relationships. Because we avoid people who can't communicate to us in ways that we find pleasurable or informative or like we're getting through to them. I have a relative that I don't even bother communicating because they've got a thick skull. They know everything. So you already know whatever you say is going to be discounted. I don't waste that energy. If I communicate exactly what I need for the moment and leave it alone. It's just the way it is. So, being intentional with your communication, ask yourself this question: how intentional are you before you speak? Are you off the cuff when you talk? Just open mouth and words fly out? Are you lazy with your communication? Are you repetitive? Unexamined rather, habitualized, and off the cuff communication is the norm. And we're typing that stuff. That is how we type and post. Image management is very important on social media. So, what starts running through your mind when you're communicating? Here are some of the questions that I think is important for you to ask yourself and learn the basics of intentional communication. It's the basics. This is a learned skill. So I want you to tell yourself right now, I can learn to be a better communicator. I can learn to use effective communication and listening skills. I can be intentional with the words that I choose and use. You can also be intentional about the words you choose to listen to. You can't come to me and gossip. One, I don't have the time. Two, I'm not that concerned with someone else's business. And three, it's not good. It doesn't do any good. You can't even come to me with gossip trying to ask for prayer, which is another favorite thing churchy people do. They'll guys their gossip and, oh girl, we need to pray. Yeah, we do that. I know church folk. I used to be one. I'm not anymore. So anyway, here's how you can be an intentional communicator. These are just some tips. You can apply them. I hope you will write them down, but I also will place them in the chat box for you guys after the broadcast. One, think before you speak. Be mindful what you say, when you say it, and why you say it. What's your goal? What's the end game to opening your mouth? You have one, or you wouldn't speak. It just may not be in the surface of your mind. It may be in your subconscious. Because as I said, if you've developed a passive aggressive communication style, this is something that will help you immensely to be consistently able to express yourself without anger, without submerged feelings and being what we call microaggressive. I mean, just face it, you hate people of color. So anytime you talk to them, you've got that nice, nasty, pretend communication, but underneath all of that, you really don't like them. This is something I go through when I teach inclusion and diversity, which I have my whole system that usually blows up a place, but it's good. They always learn to be better communicators. Even if you hate someone, you can learn these skills and become a better communicator. So practice mindfulness. Stop before you speak. That was part of the first week, I gave you a homework assignment to cut your words in half. And that was to kind of introduce to you your ability, your own individual ability to be quiet, to STFU. And no, I don't mean the bad word. I use flip or, I don't use the F bomb. But you can't shut up, cut your words in half. Be mindful about what you say, how you say it, and why. Now, second way to be intentional, develop a skill around your body language habits, especially your tone of voice. And it's a big one. This is a big one. I have to work on this one the hardest because I have a tone in my voice that can be perceived as aggressive because I'm direct with my words. If my tone isn't softer, if I don't soften my tone, my voice can come across shrill, high pitched, and people perceive it as negative instantaneously. They can also find it instantaneously aggressive by how I move my head, how I use my hands, because I'm a hand talker. And I take up a lot of space. When I'm teaching someone to remove aggression from their communication skills, in your interpersonal relationships, it's a good idea to get closer to the person you're communicating with and bring your body language inward. Remember, the other person is listening to what you're saying. Modulate your voice down. Make sure your tone isn't loud. And mothers, I have to remind so many of you, everybody's not your child. You can't take that tone with grown people. We're going to shut you off and miss immediately because we know that's the tone you use when you're talking to a child, which you shouldn't even talk to them that way, but it's a habitual communication style. Modulate your voice down. Get closer to the people you're in interpersonal relationships with and talk. Even couples, I've had them to hold hands or to sit next to each other and touch each other's knee. It's really hard to argue like that. Now, that's only in your interpersonal communication when you're dealing with someone you love that you're in a close relationship with. With your coworkers, when you're communicating difficult things, get into a closer personal space, but not an over aggressive close communication space. I sometimes take a step back, modulate my voice down, and realize is my body language aggressive? Like, am I up here? All this hand stuff going on, all this head stuff going on, all this finger. Yeah. Pay attention to your body language and especially your tone of voice when you're communicating intentionally. You'll find this is a difficult thing to do, especially if you're habitually communicating in your own style and you don't want to change or you don't think you need to change. Third thing, watch your words. While body language does convey a lot of your communication instantaneously, we're visual creatures. We're going to look at how you're standing, how your body is, if you're taking up a lot of room, if you're using your hands, if your head's moving, and if your tone's high-pitched or loud. We're going to take that first before we even take in your words. But those words coming out your mouth, they matter. How you choose your words matters. And as adults, we don't like this. We don't like being told you need to watch how you talk to people. People are being killed because of the mouth. How they're talking to people. Just being emboldened to do some crazy stuff. So watch your words. And I'll say it again. I know it can be ad nauseum and a little repetitive, but I'm doing it intentionally. We have to hear things 11 to 12 times before we retain it. Words matter, not just words said, but what's meant by the words said. It matters. So watch your words. And then finally, notice how you are feeling in all of your communications. I asked you to take an inventory, a self inventory the first week. How are people responding to you? When you talk, are you ending up in a lot of strife? Are you ending up in a lot of arguments? Are people backing away from you? Or are people seeking you out to communicate with? That will tell you so much. So much. So pay attention and notice how you feel with all of your communication. Emotional responses are very important indicators of where you are in your communication. What are your intentions? If you're feeling angry, your communication is probably going to come out angry all the time. If you're somebody who doesn't feel your opinion matters or that you're heard, you're going to be someone who either mumbles or doesn't speak up. Or when you do say something, you say it with a lackadaisical. You can if you want, that type of passive communication. And all the while inside, you're feeling like nobody wants to hear you. And I want to tell you, if you're feeling that way, it is important to take some of these lessons and improve your communication skills. This is probably not people don't want to listen to you. It could be the way you're communicating and the words you're using. And maybe you're intensely negative in your communication. And so people don't want to listen to you. Nobody wants to listen to complaints and people being negative all the time or highly political or know-it-alls or any of that. People want to be heard. So being intimate and being a good communicator can save a life. And also developing these skills for yourself will make you a much happier, more fulfilled individual because you're meeting your need to communicate with humans. We need to talk. We have to talk. Everything in your life, your quality of your relationships, your quality at work, all boils down to how you communicate. So notice how you're feeling in all your communications. Take note before you open your mouth. Make an inventory of yourself. Right now, I'm feeling upset. I tend to withdraw and keep quieter when I'm going through something because I already know the potential to be an aggressive and not an assertive communicator, which is my goal. Watch your words. Remember, words matter, not just what's said, but what's meant by what's said. What are the words you're choosing? What's coming out of your mouth? Are you cussing a lot? Are you always negative? Are you always after somebody in your speech? That passive aggressive, shady, we call it throwing shade. Are you that type of a communicator? How do people respond to your communication? Do they come nearer to you or are they trying to get away from you? Develop skill around your body language habits. Understand tone matters. For you mothers, work on not talking to everybody like they're one of your kids. Because we're not. And adults don't like that. Men, work on talking to people like women are different. We take in information through our feelings and then we get to our logic. Please stop saying women are illogical and only emotional. We're not. We have logic. It's just we have to filter our emotions to get to our logic. So stop saying that. Yes, you're going to deal with our emotions first, but give us time. And if you communicate with us well, we will settle down and get to the information and we'll consider what you're saying because women are wired for community and nurturing and relationship. Men, you're wired to put out information that's void of emotions. But I like to tell women, stop saying men don't have emotions. I personally believe men are more emotional than women. It's just they're deep and they have to go through their logic to get to their emotions. So when I communicate with men, I try to be a lot more aggressive and very factual and information based. I don't really spend a whole lot of time with the feelings thing unless it's somebody I'm in an interpersonal relationship with, like loved ones. Then I'll share my feelings. But when I'm at work, I try to be very factual with men when I'm communicating because they really don't care how I feel. They just want the facts. So, this is a very important way we're wired, the way the brain works, the human male female role brain, the way it works. Men taking information to get to their feelings and emotions, which I believe personally are deeper, and they feel things and they don't get over things like we do as women, and women taking information through their emotions to get to their logic. So when you share information with a woman, it's really good to give us feelings statements so we can then process what you're saying the feelings meant to you. Then we'll get to our logic. And it's the opposite with men. Give them the logic first, then share the feelings if they're interpersonal. But at work, it's probably not a good idea to go around sharing your feelings all the time. But you can communicate much more effectively and watch your tone, watch your body language. Then think before you speak. Don't just word salad and let words fly out of your mouth without any intention or any regard for the words you're using and how you're talking to people, and also how you're listening to people. Okay? So, that's the information for today. I pray something was said that matters. It's something that's helpful to you and will help make you a better communicator and also more conscientious of the words you use and your intentions behind them. Remember, we tend to judge people by their actions, but we want to be judged by our intentions. So learn to be a more intentional communicator. Okay? So, still making changes with the format and with my show. Hopefully, I will continue this. I'm starting some engagements in the next month that are going to take up a lot more of my time. Plus, people are back in school, back at work, in the office. Oh, sis, you have a great week. And thank you for joining me. This information was very helpful for you. I'm so grateful. I think knowing that always makes me feel real good. And thank you for your support. You know, you matter to me. And this stuff is good, isn't it? It can really, really improve your life instantaneously when you take in your information and you learn how to better communicate. Understand your communication style that you naturally default to, but then also work to improve it so you don't feel like you're all one way all the time, because you're not. We change. And right now, I think this is something that will instantly improve the world if we all learn to be better communicators, especially on social media. For God's sake, stop the keyboard gangsterism and stop image managing and putting out images that you know ain't true. And, I even tell people, couples that are fighting over social media posts, which is crazy to me. That's why if I'm in a relationship, I wouldn't post him even if he was lost. I've just learned the hard way about putting my business out there. My social media is very intentional. It's business driven and factual. I'm not trying to put my interpersonal out for consumption. I share things when I'm teaching and when I'm trying to inform people, but that's stuff mostly related to me. You'll rarely see pictures of me with other people, even my friends, my girlfriends. When we go out, I've learned people don't like pictures of themselves. Most people don't. So I've learned rather than get a phone call and somebody, why'd you post that picture? I didn't like that picture. So yes, ma'am, we're going next level. Yes, we are. And we're also being better communicators. I can't wait to take this, sis, Erica. I can't wait to take this on a much broader scale, like we've been discussing, because this is information that will change people's lives. And I can't wait to lecture on it. It's really important. So anyway, I will see you guys next Monday, 10 a.m. CST, right here on the Achieve with Dr. C broadcast. And be sure to click like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And that's where I'm building to try and get to an influencer level. So I'm really trying to grow that and need your help and support. Please go follow me on YouTube so I can get to that influencer level and get this information out on a greater scale. Big heart for you too, sis. And thank you guys for hanging with me today and getting this information, and use it. Don't forget your homework assignment. Watch how you're feeling when you communicate, and then watch how people are responding to you, and check the words you're using. Are you a passive communicator? Are you a passive aggressive communicator? Are you an aggressive communicator? Or are you assertive, which is the goal, to be able to speak up, but use words that impart grace to your listeners? It's all we're after here. Thanks again. I'll see you guys next week. Have a blessed week.